Welcome to this first and inaugural episode of our new podcast, Push to Pull. I'm here with Michael Tatham, and before I introduce our star guest today, just have a quick intro to myself. I'm Tim Neumann. I'm a fellow of Tatham Corporation, taking care of advancing the methodology, bringing in some agile perspectives to it, and just building new products together with Michael. But let's just start with our star guest today. Michael Tatham has 20 years of expertise in the business, has worked with world-renowned companies, not just in Canada, not just in the US, but also in Europe and worldwide. And what sets Michael apart for myself is having worked with him for 2.5-3 years now.
It's about that, yeah. It's looking about 3 years, yeah.
Setting him apart. He's not just a consultant, he's a true builder of culture, a true enabler, empower, and he opened that door for me, and so it's a pleasure to have you here in that first episode of the podcast. But before I toot your horn too much, just have a quick intro to yourself.
Yeah, no, this is great to be getting this out. I've always shied away from doing content, and I've been told we need to talk more about these things and and promote what we do and the things that we're doing. But tons of opportunities out in the world now, and it's great to be able to have a timeless offering. So we've been around over 50 years, believe it or not. Now it's the 50-year mark. So, have a great history in this company and really want to share a lot of the stories and experiences we have. And, I've been very close to, also evolving the product. Yeah. You can't, everyone knows this, you cannot have a business where the product stays the same because then you die. Yeah. So we have to, eat our own cooking. And that's been a tremendous journey. And obviously, it's my father, the founder, casts a big shadow, but I think we've done a pretty good job of going to the next phase and kind of getting this business growing. So excited to be part of that and to share some of these stories in the podcast. And I know he'll have some point of view as well to share some stories. So excited, yeah.
Perfect. And because you said we're eating our own cookie here, we'll just start. So as a quick overview for you listeners, we will have a quick intro today. So basically, what are we doing? What is Tatham about? What is the systematic method about that we'll be going to talking about? Yeah. We'll have some talks, like you said, to your dad, having his perspective of founding the company, having some insights and having some amazing stories about what he's experienced over the past 50 years. But just to have a slow start. What is that all about? What is this Tatham systematic method? What are we doing here?
Yeah, it's like, it probably wasn't until the last few years that we could actually say we've got a one-liner for what we do. And I was always so picky. I was like, oh, well, I don't want to be called a management consultant. I don't want to be use that word process. And I was always telling myself all the things I don't want to do. But it all boils down to one thing. We're really empowering and improving our clients' workplace culture. Yeah. It's all about culture. And I mean, if anyone doesn't know this now, you really should. And that is that with this great resignation that's been occurring since COVID, people want to work in a place that's fun, innovative, just a great place to work. Yeah. And the question is, how do you build something like that? And so we've really taken everything we've developed over the last 50 years, a really great proven system that is, I would argue, top down and bottom up. It's a sandwich approach. And we've been able to bring this system to organizations that are really struggling with trying to really answer that question of how do we improve workplace culture. There is, I would argue, there is a recipe, a systematic approach that can get you there. And it's pretty intuitive if you follow it. So that's really what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get into that. That's how we got to know each other.
Indeed.
I started at a company that introduced or reintroduced the Tatham systematic method 2.5 years ago. And just a little foreshadowing, on my third day at the new company, I got thrown into this thing you call boot camp, and it's third day of a new company, and then you have a 3-day, very comprehensive, very brain-frying experience.
Indeed.
And then there's this Canadian guy on a Zoom call. He's up at 2:30 in the morning. And what is this all about? But the past 2.5 years showed me what this is truly about, how you implement it, and why the hell anyone should follow this. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next 3 episodes. But just to give a start, you call it, or the 4 phases of the method are ignite, launch, train, and sustain. Could you give us a little insight on what those 4 words are about, or what lays behind that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we try and categorize everything we do into 4 phases, I think it always becomes difficult because there's a lot of phases that you're going through. The question is, what are the most pronoun or profound phases? And for us, the igniting stage is probably the most important. I think the industry would call it change readiness.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, be on this podcast and try and tell you we've got this magic pill that once you take it, everyone's just loving this stuff right away. It's hard.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of it's hard, like anything that's rewarding in life. It requires discipline and whatnot. But the ignition stage for us really is getting the early adopters, those that are wanting change, those that may love the organization but really struggle with this idea of sticking around any longer because it's just getting too hard or they want something new. And so ignition for us is starting with the leadership team is just admitting that you got to get into changing the way you do things. And so the way we're doing that is using experiential learning. If you can go through the motions and try our approach out, kind of like test driving a car before you buy it, it's got an amazing ability to get people on board and to really get them excited and motivated to want to go on a change journey, because change sucks. Doesn't matter how you look at it. Like
no one likes that.
No one likes it. We're creatures of habit, right? So we want to make sure that we keep doing the things that have been working for us. Even if they stop working, we're just so used to doing it, right? So that ignition phase really is all about getting the buy-in. Yeah. And look, not everyone's going to buy into this, but the idea is get those early adopters, get some key senior leaders involved in this where they're like, you know what, this is not as counterintuitive as one might think. So that's really the first phase, is getting that ignition. Launch is proof of concept. Like, we're not going to go into an organization working with key leaders and say, hey, we've got this 5-year plan and we're going to do all these amazing things. Oh, and by the way, if we leave, you're going to fall on your face. Like, no one wants to sign up for that. No. So it goes back to the saying, the secret to the many is the solution to the one. And I think what we do really well is just prototype our approach. We'll choose something that's a burning platform or, one of those nagging problems that just won't go away. That has, it can be low-hanging fruit, sometimes it's not. And then just launch our approach, get the right people rallied around, get them to boot camp, having them speaking the same language, and then use our approach. We like to select a couple of areas in the business to start in. We'd be coaching the client through this. And then, so as we launch, we're getting in, we can see that it's not just a feel-good exercise, there's actually tangible results that follow. And not just financial, obviously financial super key. That's just how it is, but you do start to see some of that culture change during that launch journey. So that's really about the second phase of launching. The training part's interesting. I almost hate to say this, and I know John, our head of marketing development, would kill me for this, but it's like, we're really not even training. We're actually untraining.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know this, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? There's a lot of skill sets people develop over the years that are super helpful. And there are a lot that are not. And then some you acquire as just, over the years working in an organization that you have to use to sustain yourself, and work your way up the corporate ladder. So there are a lot of things I think that we're bringing to our clients that are about untraining them. Yeah. And not just untraining individuals, but as an organization, as teams, right? Building those high performance teams require that recognition. So that's really, and look, the whole business model, this, the whole business model is about transferring a capability. Yeah. By design, Tatham does not have an army of consultants that's going to go running around the organization with a solution, in search of problems. Like, we just don't do that. Yeah. We know your business the best. You might just be struggling a bit with how to rally everyone together and tackle them, especially when you're cutting across functions. Yeah. So that's really the train part. And then the sustain is really just kind of the program itself and putting all of those pieces together and making sure the right leaders are in place, the right structures, and ultimately working towards building a pull organization and becoming operating in a more flat manner. Yeah. The reality is, I don't ever think I'll ever see an organization rid of their hierarchy, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring some element of flat decision-making and operations. So, yeah.
Especially when you say about untraining and empowerment. Yeah. A lot of the things that, that we talked about it a lot, where I came from what the culture was at the client that I worked for before. Mm-hmm. The habits of hot fixing, of I see a problem, let's create a project around it, and there might be other teams seeing the same problems, creating a project around it without even communicating with each other, and then you have band-aids all over the place. So where do you see, or I mean, I know it, but it's just for the sake of our listeners, what's the difference? What is this setting apart, and especially combined with boot camp as an experience of untraining? Because trust me, it was horrifically painful, especially the first day. It's a different way of thinking. It's not about I jump to the quickest solution or I jump to the first thing that I see. But how do you, especially in that Ignite and this bootcamp phase, and with addressing a problem systematically and not just hot fixing it, where do you see you come in there?
Yeah, it's hard because guaranteed every listener right now, especially the senior leaders, are thinking to themselves, oh yeah, sure, if I had the time.
Yeah.
My counter argument to that is, I think it was Einstein's quote. I hate to make quotes, but I have to. Einstein's quote was, you can't solve problems with the same thinking that created them.
Yeah.
So you're just beating a dead drum. You can keep beating it, no one's hearing you.
And we love beating dead drums.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it requires a lot of energy and it looks like a lot of work. And
yes.
That goes back to a push organization. It's output driven. So, I mean, I think it goes back to really the secret sauce is really boot camp. It's not a silver bullet by any means, but what it does is it really helps the client become introspective.
Yeah.
And you know this because you've facilitated them before. We even just recently did one a couple of days ago. We're not here to point out the flaws in the client. We all have flaws. Even here at Tatham, we have things we need to work on. And I have my advisors and my coaches that I work with. So the idea of boot camp is that introspection. It's almost like you're able to watch yourself operate from above and say, oh my goodness, yes, we do those things. And you can kind of relate to that. But it's not just about, pointing out flaws. It's also about, we have great things as a team. We are very close to becoming a high performance team.
Yeah.
Small things that we can do to make a big difference. And approaching problems systematically, and the critical thinking in general, I'm going to go to a limb and say it's becoming a lost art.
Yes, definitely.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those technology haters. I am one of the biggest technologists you'll ever meet. I've got my whole house is automated. Right? My kids don't even know how to use Siri. So I love technology, but I also think that with the rise of AI, machine learning, a lot of the systems that are being brought into organizations, and people's fear of losing their jobs, the one thing you just can't take away from us is that critical thinking. But it really is becoming a lost art. And then with the budgets that are available, the way the economy is, limited resources, it just becomes a very vicious cycle of patch things up, as you said, hot fix, and then you just have these reoccurring problems. And then, unfortunately, the knee-jerk reaction or intuitive response is to reach out to consultants, right? We are consultants. And the expectation is that we're going to come in with a different silver bullet. Yeah. If the consultant can't figure it out, then my goodness, who's going to be able to do this? Especially a big McKinsey or Bain or any of the big ones. But the reality is you can solve your own problems. And I think that's really what we want to display to our clients is, it's going to hurt. You got to take the time. Like anything you want to improve in your life, if you don't take the time to do it, then it's not going to happen. And if you want someone to do it for you, it's probably not going to be sustained. So that's really what we're trying to emphasize around this ignition stage and building the boot camp capability and learning these things and being introspective is that recognition and change readiness. But also it's not just about, hey, I point out all the flaws. We actually have a system to take care of that, which is super empowering.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest take for me while working with you. It's not I come in, I know your business better than you do. It's rather I have no idea. You're honest about that. I have no idea about your business. Yeah. But I know how to build a system that supports the people and empowers the people. And I think that was the biggest lift that I saw in the way you do things. And that's the reason why I stayed here and interview you, because I believe in that. I definitely believe in it because I saw it working. Transitioning over, you said, or we established you have 20 years of experience in that business and you've worked with a variety of customers. Just give us an insight of what the usual ask is, who your customers are, what type of problems they see. Just give us a feeling for that.
Yeah, it's just so broad, but I guess we can narrow it down to a few. Let me start with the ones that were profound for me. Financial service is always a fascinating one for me. I think that, and this is mostly insurance and banking, I think that the insurance and banking industries, there's just so much complexity.
Yeah.
And so many layers of leadership, and middle management, I think, is just getting beat up on, to be honest with you. There's that argument of there's too many of them, they're not doing their jobs, and yet they're here to translate all this communication from a strategic lens from the top, and then all these complaints and lack of follow through coming from the bottom, and they're stuck in the middle. I think so that becomes a big problem, I think, specifically in financial service. It exists everywhere, but mostly for financial services. So we worked with all the big banks. We Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all at different times. We have a couple of branchless banks we're working with, insurance companies, Canada Life we've worked with, Hartford Life. So you have quite a number of clients over the years that in banking and insurance. So that is one area that we've worked quite a lot in. And then, the origins of the company came from aerospace and defense. Yeah. Right? This is where this whole technical problem came from when we partnered with HP to build out this boot camp experience many years ago. So aerospace and defense has been, tried and true for us. It's really kind of the legacy of the company. So we got NASA, and we just recently Aerospace Corp. We've worked with Lockheed Martin. We've worked with Rockwell International back in the day, Northrop Grumman. So a pretty phenomenal client list, I would say. So we'll talk about some of their industry challenges. I can maybe just discuss a few that are pretty common regardless of what industry you're in. But I think probably the biggest one is just continuity of operations, ways of doing things. And look, there's millions of methodologies out there, but I think what makes ours just that much more profound for our clients is that you can use it on anybody. You don't have to be a engineer or a Six Sigma black belt or any of those trained or certified any methodology. There's really just a tremendous amount of intuitiveness to it, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. It's what's the initial goal of hiring you? I mean, you said you're obviously a consultant as well. So what's the mindset of people hiring you? What's the goal that they give out when they reach out to you? Do they understand that the methodology that they're about to buy in is something different, or are they still approaching you with the same questions that they would ask anyone else?
Yeah, so it's hard because to some degree we're kind of operating like a Trojan horse. I think you know this, right?
I know this, yeah.
So it's like, it's hard too. Like, I just, for our listeners here, just to appreciate this, we're selling something that we know everyone needs and we all need it, but we don't really like it.
No.
It's kind of like eating healthy. It's like, I know I need to eat healthy, but man, junk food tastes good.
Yeah.
Right? Those silver bullets taste great. I love that fried chicken,
Yes.
But the reality is the broccoli and the asparagus and the greens, they're good for you. They may not taste as good, but they're good for you. So I think in essence, what we're doing is we're just working with the client and getting down and to their level and just listening to what their problems are and starting with that. So if it is usually a theme of workplace culture, for example, our people don't want to come in the office anymore, or they're working remotely, but we can't really tell if they're working hard. Like, there's all these reasons why things are not going the way the client wants them to. But it doesn't matter, because when you get to boot camp and they start to unravel some of these things, then they realize, well, maybe some of these things are just symptoms. It could be like a legitimate leadership challenge. A lack of alignment at the top creates a lot of problems going down. So that tends to be quite a big request coming from leadership teams, and why they often want to come to boot camp is like their lack of alignment and common language. So everyone's got like a really great way of solving problems, but they're so individual that when it comes to an agreement and a decision-making process, it's just no continuity.
Yeah, not only no continuity, but transitioning over, they're usually disconnected.
100%. And you're working with all the silos in the business.
Oh, yeah.
If you have an engineering department, customer interfacing, sales, marketing, everyone's comes with a different discipline. And so to get everyone on the same page and really be thinking about that end-to-end customer experience can be a difficult thing to do. You might just say, we're going to do a customer journey map today. It's like, great, but I still don't understand my piece and how it contributes to the greater process or the greater experience. And that's one great thing about, again, the boot camp experience, is that it brings everyone together into a common language.
Yes.
And you can always reflect back on it, and then it allows you to propel forward. Or you can have like 3 years of going back and forth and not really speaking the same language.
Well, some companies prefer that. It's just But that's back to setting the culture. But that's usually the, I mean, you know that as well. That's the best explanation to not do the things. It's because we've always done that. I mean, we were successful. We wouldn't be here if our ways wouldn't be successful. But I guess you see that as well. The current way of operating changes. The market changes. The world changes. The speed of decision making has to change. And if you're stuck in your old ways, you know that.
You're dead in the water. Dead in the water. I would just add, though, that there's a little off script here, but I feel like I learn a tremendous amount from clients over the years. I've learned so much. 20 years it's just been like school.
I would agree.
It's seeing different leaders, and look, part of it is like some great leadership as well. Learned a tremendous amount from some leaders. Also learn what not to do, and what's not working.
Yeah. And
you see those consistently, and then you gain that confidence. And when I came into the business, looking at more from a product perspective, and I was involved in the knowledge transfer piece because I just love that. That's just my, it's my bread and butter. When I had to get into the rest of the business around the development side and the marketing side and the, fulfillment and whatnot, it just goes back to the roots, which is you have organizations that are fundamentally flawed, and they know it. They may not say it outright, but they're like fundamentally flawed. You can see it in the culture.
Yes.
But can they admit that? Can they come out and say, we actually need help with this? It's so much easier just to get a consultant in and say, well, you have industry expertise. Can you help us build this system? And that'll fix all our problems.
Yeah, it's sometimes, again, off script, it sometimes feels like an AA meeting. Like
it is. It is.
Get together. It's like, hey, I'm finance and I see the following problem. And then marketing comes up with, hey, I'm marketing. I have the same issue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why don't they just work together? It's that just breaks my head every single time when we come together in teams and talk about those issues.
Yeah.
Those are not rocket science issues. Those are simple issues, and that transitioning on to Ignite, that's where bootcamp for me came in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very neutral, especially me working in financial services. Again, back to day 3 of my second job, that day where I met you, it's like, what the hell are we doing here? It's like we were working on this Model A. That's the key part, the bread and butter part. And why are we doing that? Why are we working on 8 terminals, a platine? Why is that garage door opener apparently the solution to our problems? That has nothing to do with that. But going through that, getting my brain fried, I saw what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying talking points are something that you can relate back. When the teams get heavy or when it becomes emotional, you can come back to that bootcamp experience. Like, hey, it's not about you being sales, marketing, and you guys getting into the trenches of 10 years of underlying issues not being solved. Be the terminal, be the wire.
Yeah, I obviously fun phrases that we've used for many years. I would just add to what you're saying because it resonates with me. I've been asked many years to cater or adjust the bootcamp experience to the business we're working with, right? Consistently. And look, I get the whole customer is always right. There's a certain element to that, but there's also another piece. After 50 years, we've learned a few things. I think one of them is, the clients we probably have the most challenges with when they go through bootcamp are the ones that are closest to manufacturing, which is interesting because all the others are able to take a lot of the confirmation bias or cognitive bias and put it aside for a moment because they're working through a problem they're not as familiar with. And just for all our listeners here, the problems that our clients are working through in bootcamp were legitimate industry problems.
Yeah.
And they're not just made up in a room. So really, it's any industry that's not familiar with manufacturing tend to have the most value out of this. Doesn't mean that manufacturing don't, they do as well. But the metaphors and the parallels that you can draw to the experiences in bootcamp, they resonate loud and clear. It's obvious. Yeah. You see it. We see it whether it be virtual or face-to-face. You always have some participants saying, this is exactly what happens back in our organization.
Yeah.
And the key to that, which I absolutely love, is that no bootcamp is ever the same because the client brings their culture. And so it displays itself, it reveals its underbelly, it comes out of the woodwork very quickly. Yeah. And that's why leaders love it, is they're able to say, this is how we operate on a day-to-day basis. Here are the great things about our culture. We're open, we're inclusive, we have tons of empathy. Yeah. Here are the things that aren't so great about our culture. We tend to lack follow through. We say yes to everything. We're always looking for silver bullets. I don't have to say anything. Yeah. The client can recognize that on their own, and that is so powerful. And that's, I think, again, why I absolutely love this product and had the privilege of contributing to it and facilitating it for so many years, because without it, you're dead in the water. I can't imagine trying to go through a change without having a team that's like, yes, this is where we are. This is how we operate now. Here's where we want to go. And here's the blueprint to getting there. To me, that is just like absolutely gold.
It's like you said, I think in one of our very first Coaching the Coach sessions, it's about getting the right people in the right system. It's usually you have the right people, they have the knowledge, but they're in a system that is, I wouldn't want to say rigged against them, but the system is set up in a way that doesn't make success easy to them. They have the knowledge, they have the expertise. The frontline workers know what they're about. It's just creating that system that allows them to shine. And I think that's a key part of when we talk about creating an experience for people. That's that. There are a lot of team building exercises. There are a lot of
fall back into my arms and you can trust me. No, I'm making fun of them. They're good, but you're right. There's the application side.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The team building is a fundamental part of all of this. But look, that introspection is priceless. It's priceless. It's like, I give you a quick analogy. I can tell my 4-year-old son that he needs to go and get dressed and put on these pants, this shirt, and those socks. Yeah. And for any parent out there, you will understand this. It can take forever sometimes for them to get it all on, screaming and crying. And I'm thinking to myself, kid, just put your clothes on. We got to get to school.
Yeah.
But all he wants to know is that he has a choice, and he wants to figure these things out on his own, because that's what he's doing at his age. He's trying to get that ability to make decisions on his own and come to conclusions on his own. And that's what we do in boot camp. We sit back, we put our clients in these positions, we do a little coaching, but the client almost coaches themselves through this whole experience. And I absolutely love that. Again, I'm learning so much about them in 2 days that I think probably most consultants, when they onboard a client and they go through their discovery process, take them months to figure out what we figure out in a couple of days. So that introspection, again, I keep using that word, is just super important.
Yeah, and just for your insights, when we had our first boot camp back in, I think, 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
Still to this day, when I walk through the offices of the company that I still work for, Be the Wire back then, it was a bonding experience. It was not a team building experience. This was not an escape room, or I don't know. We were in a pond and we threw some logs in, and you have 30 minutes or you die.
To build a raft.
Build a raft exercise. It was a team building experience, but it was a true learning experience and a bonding experience as well. It's just a shame that back then it was the peak of COVID and we had to go to the virtual one, but still, it was a powerful exercise.
Well, don't be so quick to dismiss the virtual, because the virtual is there.
I don't.
Yeah, the virtual is still good experience, but yeah, I'm all, you know me, I'm all about the face-to-face still.
Yeah, just to set the highlights. But not just whether it's virtual or it's in person, you always say boot camp is a simulation. Mm-hmm. And just for our listeners, you have an aviation background, and a lot of the simulation talk, and in our introduction, we talk about boot camp as a simulation.
Right.
Why is it that we explicitly call it a business simulation in that sense?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So similar to an aircraft simulator, for those listeners who are not familiar with it, commercial pilots will go through an aircraft simulator, and different airlines will put their pilots through, I guess, in different intervals. But for the most part, you're looking at it a couple of times a year. And the idea is not to learn how to fly. Like, look, clients know how to run their business. Some of these companies are Fortune 100 companies. They're doing quite well. Thank you very much. But the idea is there are scenarios. And there are instances where they're not handling situations and as well as they could. And what's great about a simulation is it allows you to recognize your intuitive responses to a lot of those emergency situations. When you look at it from a pilot's perspective, how often do I get an engine on fire? Hopefully never. but I want to learn how to deal with that when it does happen. And I want to make sure I'm calm, and I want to make sure that I have an emergency operating procedure to deal with it, and I want to be able to get to the ground safely. And it's no different in a business environment. You have all sorts of things going on, left, right, and center, and it's like where you divide your attention can be, the difference between a positive or negative quarter, or a year for that matter, right? Or an acquisition decision, or anything. And so you want to be at the top of your game. And I think simulations really are, and they're coming to light more and more. You can see, the competition's out there. They are an integral part of learning about how you make decisions as an individual, as a team, and then to practice this stuff, right? How do you actually approach a problem?
Yeah.
Do you think through it critically? Do you take your time and go slow to go fast so you don't have to deal with it again? Or do you jump in, throw some solutions around, and exit and just pray to God it doesn't come back to you again? I'll tell you this much. I don't want to do that if I have an engine on fire, because if it relights, you're in big trouble.
But it's, it's just so easy to just throw solutions out there. It's the engine, or it's the fuel, or whatever it is. It's
fun too. It's adrenaline rush. It's like you get your dopamine fix. Throw in some solutions. Yeah. Look how innovative I am.
And maybe some of them are even working for a period of time, but still. You have that, like you said, dopamine high, and it's just nice to solutionize. It's so easy, though.
Yeah. We'll call it Solutioners Anonymous.
Yeah, we might do that. Coming out of boot camp, usually the boot camp is a 2 or 3 day experience, and then right after boot camp, we launch a team. Just not to go into detail, but what is it about? How long are those teams operate? What's the setup?
Sure.
Just give it a little insight. We'll follow up on another episode, but just as a little snack.
Yeah, sure, little snack. So the idea is that when the senior leadership team goes through the boot camp experience, and they can say, I know how now we can leverage our individual contributors, our frontline workers, to come up with some super innovative solutions and really redesign the way that we operate. That's really like the big, I would call it, what's the right word to look for? It's the big check mark, or the big pass to say, it's time to go, let's do this. And so once they've now gone through this boot camp experience, we have the team members do the same, right? And we say, look, your senior leadership team is taking this seriously. They've gone through this. They spent 2 days going through what you're going through. They're serious about this. Yeah. So that's really empowering, right? And when the team that's put together, and look, just get into the detail of this, when we put together these boot camps and the attendance, and we look at the participants, it's strategic. You're not just inviting someone to put another notch on the belt and say, hey, I went through boot camp, I'm trained.
Just had some training hours left that I had to spend.
Yeah, I need some training hours, or I did this course. I don't like looking at this as a course. I really don't. The idea is that the teams, the whole purpose is, we went through this great experience. We can see where we need to improve, but can we actually put this into practice? Yeah. So we like to work with a client and typically choose 2 processes in the business. Sometimes it's one that's more of a narrow slice that cuts through functions. Mm-hmm. So it's through multiple silos. But when I say narrow slice, you don't want to try and eat the elephant all in one bite, because that's no fun. So it's just narrow enough that you can see it works across functions, and it can solve a legitimate problem that you can then start to deal with in implementation across different products or services or business lines, whatever it might be. And then a second team that might be more of a deep dive into a specific area of the business, or a problem that's like, the stone in the shoe, or it very well could be a burning platform, like, team member retention, an onboarding process, a loan application, something like that. And the idea is you come out of this and you're like, okay, we went to boot camp. We really buy into this way of operating. It's pretty intuitive, in fact. Now we can see it works. And the best part about it is the individuals that are taking this theory and putting it into practice are the ones actually doing the work.
Yeah.
It's not middle managers. It's not the senior leadership team. It's the people that are rolling their sleeves up every day performing the work. Yeah. And the great thing about that is that since they're the ones performing the work, when they come up with the solutions to these problems, and they've gone into depth to figure out what's going wrong, they have a pretty high motivation to want to implement it, because they're their ideas.
Oh yeah, trust me. It's I saw that it's magical. You have those frontline workers that have been in a subpar operation for years that lost the motivation to think outside the box, or that were never allowed to ask why the hell are we doing that? Why they're just doing their thing, and allowing them or kissing them awake for 8 weeks and give them the power to ask why, and then having them develop the solutions like you said, or just have a look into it, work together. Maybe departments that never usually communicate with each other have communicated with each other, or have people actually see what their colleagues are doing. They usually just see, I'm complaining about you're not fast enough, or you don't do what you do. And then having them sit beside them and see what the actual work looks like, and having aha moments all across the board, like, Jesus, that's what you have to do? My God. And then allowing them to proudly present what they came up with to executives. It's such an empowering feeling. It's amazing. And just to round that out, so we now have a team. They presented their solutions, or they presented their improvement proposal. Going forward into the train and sustain part, your favorite question, what now?
Yeah, what now? I mean, ultimately, I guess I haven't really talked too much about this, but bootcamp is the transformation of an organization over maybe a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
And we're doing it in 2 days. Right? So obviously there's a ton of detail that we're leaving out. That being said, it's just enough to get everyone to understand what that journey can look like. And so when the first 2 teams are launched, the idea is 98% of the time it's tackling quality or delivery.
Yeah.
So quality of product or service, quality of experience, and delivery would be, can we do it within the time frame that your customers or stakeholders have been promised? And so those 2 metrics are the big ones that launch these teams. And they get to the point where the improvement proposal has knocked everyone's socks off, and then becomes the big question: can we actually get this implemented?
That's usually a very good question.
And that's where we're headed. And that's honestly where the harder work begins. Getting everyone on board and having them go through the experience and build out these phenomenal solutions to what some might call impossible problems to solve is actually the easy part. Yeah. It's when we get into that implementation piece that becomes difficult. And we built out, again, a whole offering around how to perfect your implementation.
Yeah.
Right? And again, without actually doing it right the first time and having the people involved in the work that are going to be the ones implementing, then, if you haven't done that part, then it's, I think McKinsey put out a report that said like 60 to 80% of implementations fail. I would say that 90 to 99% of them fail if they don't have the right people who are actually doing the work involved in the solution.
Especially when you have teams that now think in a different way,
yes.
But they have to use the old way of thinking to implement it, and you usually hit barriers. It's like you start in a certain place thinking end to end, creating that pool culture, but then when you want to implement it, you still have to throw it over the fence and hope that someone is gracious enough to pick it up.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna try and paint a picture that's not there. Implementation's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard when we're working with clients. It's hard for them. It's hard for us. But I feel like once we get over that hump, and they really can see those first 2 or first initiative get implemented, and they can see the results. If you have a really, really good storyteller, I know you're a great storyteller, Tim. If you can get the teams telling the story, we get these improvement proposals recorded, get it to the right people. All the early adopters in the organization that are sitting there waiting for something different, they will latch onto that, and they will become part of that whole movement.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's also the discipline part. We really pride ourselves on having the checklist, the learning modules. We have an entire learning management system that is very innovative. It's got a tremendous amount of micro learning involved, and it helps us a lot. It helps the client. You've been obviously a part of that. It's some part is the design of it as well, which is quite cool.
It's almost like you use your own method to create a pull culture for learning, but
I should hope we eat our own cooking. Yeah. Sometimes we don't. Look, to be honest with you, some things we have to remind ourselves, just like our clients. Hey, we got to practice what we preach. But yeah, the idea is that you're getting to this phase of implementation, and if the rubber can't meet the road, then you're going to abandon it. I think that's probably the biggest risk to our offering, is that you have a client, and look, we've had them before, where it gets so hard that they feel like they want to give up, and that's where we come in and say, look, we have had clients over 50 years that have been right where you are right now, And that diamond is just sitting there 1 foot more. And all you got to do is keep digging and you'll hit that diamond. And some abandon. To be honest, like to be perfectly honest, they will abandon. It's too hard. It doesn't make me look good. Sucking up too many resources. I can give you 100 excuses. You know what they are. You've heard some of them before. But if you can stick with it right through that tough time, oh man, the outcome on the other side of that is just phenomenal. So we are sticking with the client. It's a very intimate relationship. And we stick with them, especially through that first iteration, to make sure that they feel good about implementation. And the best part is, it's not a cookie cutter. You know this. It's not cookie cutter. No. Like none of this is really cookie cutter. There are some foundational pieces that we help our clients implement, but there is also this customizable piece that makes it feel like it's yours. Yeah. It's not client implementing the Tatham system. Maybe it starts that way, but eventually the client renames it to something of their own and they feel ownership in it. And that really carries it through to help scale and sustain it.
Plus, like you introduced it, it's part of the philosophy of Tatham. It's not
100%,
that you
100%.
want to create dependencies and just sell because you replaced a certain capability within the organization, but rather it's this coach-to-coach way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I get a tremendous amount of pride, and keep going back to my kids. Like when I taught my son to ride his bike, he started riding his bike when he was 3. And I just love the fact that we were working a little bit each day, and then finally he was able to do it on his own. And now I can get to school faster with him. If I want to go somewhere, he jumps on his bike. He knows the rules of the road.
Oh, he loves
and
that.
And a lot of his friends are still it's not a bad thing, but a lot of his friends are still trying to learn how to ride a bike. And I love that I've been able to get him, and he's teaching himself how to do things now. And so I feel the same way with clients. I absolutely love that a client can take this on and often take it in places I've never even seen before, to be quite honest with you. I had a client a couple of years ago, and she was just absolutely phenomenal. And her boss honestly wasn't 100% bought into this, and he wasn't sitting on the C-suite or anything. But she kept applying it, and she kept getting raises, and she kept doing really well. And I got a phone call many years later, and she said, Michael, I have applied this to my personal life. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. I like to hear those kind of stories. And so she had lost, I think, over 100 pounds.
Wow.
And I said, well, how did you use this way of thinking to lose weight? And she said, well, I just applied the same first principles that we learned in boot camp and that we applied to the business to myself, and I kept to the discipline. And he said, it just, it solved the problem. So I love hearing those kind of stories, because this is really about improving people's lives and go back to workplace culture. It's the one thing at the end of the day, if I can leave with a client, I say leave, there is this long kind of relationship that we have with our clients, but if I can leave with a client and hear that they felt like workplace culture has improved significantly, to me, that's 1,000% success.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just perfect.
Plus what you did, it's the way of thinking, this checklist methodology and going step by step. This is infectious. You know that.
Yeah, it's a good virus in the wake of all these bad viruses.
Maybe should have not said that.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said.
Still, after 2.5 years of working with you, it's hard for me to solutionize. You infected me with this. Keep it simple. What's the root cause? How do we get there? Don't solutionize first. Can we have an experiment around that? This way of thinking is infectious once you fully understood it. And I think bootcamp, the systematic method, the checklists that we have around that are the best way to influence not only people's minds, but rather it's a culture building exercise, even though we don't call it that way. And stay tuned for the next episode. The next episode, we're going to have a deeper dive into how we do things, what bootcamp is all about, how we set up teams, what a mandate is. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening to our first episode, and thanks, Michael, for your time.
Thanks, Tim. Excellent.